Chiefs have a new left tackle and a new pass rusher, and you guys have a bunch of questions that I may or may not have the answers to. Let's talk some Chiefs, guys. Welcome to the Chief of the North on RGR Football. I am Seth Kaiser, the Chief of the North. You know that because I'm wearing non-Chiefs colors and a non-Chiefs color tie. Or you might recognize me. It's hard to say. Man, it has been a lot this week in Chiefs Kingdom. There's a lot going on right now. As we do every Thursday, I've got a mailbag for you. You guys have a lot of great questions. But obviously, this week I didn't do a Monday show because free agency, the tampering period, because it's the very first time teams talk to anyone is during that time period. I'm going to move this mic here. There, maybe that's a little bit better. As we all know, teams never talk to players ever before the tampering period begins. And so with that going on Monday, I knew anything I recorded would be obsolete by the time it got to you guys. So instead, we're doing this today. Obviously, the big news for this week, the Chiefs have signed Jawaan Taylor as their new left tackle. Orlando Brown has actually landed in Cincinnati. A good fit for Cincy that I don't really like, to be perfectly honest. But I wrote about Jawaan Taylor at the Chief of the North newsletter. And they also, I'm in the process right now. I wonder if you can see it. Oh yeah, you can just barely see it. This is a piece in the making on Charles Omenihu, I believe it's pronounced, or Omenihu. I'm going to have to ask someone who knows better than me. Those of you who listen to Times Ours know that name pronunciation is not my forte. So big apologies to the Chiefs' new pass rusher, who I really like. You're going to see that article up on the Chief of the North newsletter probably by the time this comes out, because I'm very nearly done with it. I'm going to talk very briefly about Taylor as well as Charles Omenihu. This is going to bother me the entire time. But what I'll just say briefly, if you really want to take a look, you go to the Chief of North newsletter to see what I think about Jawaan Taylor. I've got the film review written up there. The short story here is this guy's feet. They're a boon, as well as his punch. You see how well he times it here in this snap against Hassan Riddick. And the reason he's able to time that punch well is because Riddick is trying to do essentially a swipe move, a swipe swim, there's a few different ways to phrase it. But I always I always ignore terminology in terms of using colloquial language and what's actually occurring here. So he's using his left arm to swipe, right arm to try to swim over, but he can't because Taylor just punches him out here. So, and the reason he's able to do that is because Riddick can't just get to the edge because Taylor beats him to the spot really well. That's really demonstrative of what I liked about Taylor. And if you want to go check out the Chief of the North newsletter, I charted 3 games against elite competition with Philly, Vegas, and Dallas because of the pass rushers he had to face there, and then kind of a control group in Indianapolis. You can take a look at the loss percentages there and some of those kinds of things. It's pretty in depth. You might enjoy it if you go take a look. There's going to be something similar again about we're going to call him Charles for right now until I find out exactly how to say his last name correctly. Good pass rusher, one I like. I assume we'll be talking about him in mailbag questions, which brings us to what we usually do here on Thursdays. You guys send questions, whether they're in the comment section below or whether they're on Twitter when I ask for them, and I try to answer them. I'm going to roll through as many as humanly possible. I've got this film review that I really need to finish, and I've got court at 8:45. So we're going to roll right into it. As we start to do that, please make sure to like, subscribe, do all the YouTube things that you ought to be doing to support Ryan and company. They do great work here in RGR Football. I'm here too, but mostly they do great work. So make sure to do all those YouTube things because it really does move the needle a lot more than you think in terms of supporting the content. And it's free. How easy is that? Now, I know Ryan's got his tiered system. You might as well subscribe for that too because everything Ryan does is awesome. All right, let's get to some mailbag questions. As always, if you want to have your questions answered next week for sure, you comment below because I give those ones priority, not in the live stream one, this one below, because otherwise it gets too difficult to sift through. You guys did a great job this week putting question marks in front of yours. I love it. And so let's get to them, and then we'll get to the questions on Twitter. I'll get through as many as humanly possible. Seattle Chief, does Orlando still have the same agent from last year? So that's Orlando Brown, obviously, who's now Cincinnati Bengal. I kind of like that. It adds a little spice to the rivalry. Brown signed a 4-year, $64 million deal with a really good signing bonus. I think it was like a $31 million, pretty hefty signing bonus, like 45 million guaranteed, give or take. Here's one thing we know. Based on what was reported last year, that's less than what the Chiefs offered him last year. And so Veach this year drew a line in the sand that was lower than last year. And, sometimes things just don't work out quite the way you're hoping to as a free agent. Had Brown taken another step forward, I think he would have been able to squeeze the Chiefs for a complete, for a $25 million a year contract. But he didn't, and the league views him a little bit differently than I think he views himself. So the question is about his agent. Look, Brown just made generational wealth. Good for him. I'm happy for him. And it's worth noting because I see a lot of something from Chiefs fans when it comes to Brown, and honestly, a lot of players who leave. And I would just say, I'm not sure the Chiefs win a Super Bowl last year without Orlando Brown. And do they maybe? Yeah, maybe, because was he one of their 5 most important players? No, but he did play competently, particularly down the stretch and in the playoffs, and that matters. So I've got nothing but good vibes for Orlando Brown. I will say that I do think that this situation was misplayed by him, and that's one reason why he didn't end up with even close to. It's not even let alone a market resetting. It's not even a market value for an elite left tackle. You're talking $16 million a year on average. Great signing bonus, and that kind of helps balance those things out. But yes, he had the same agent. Personally, I think they might have misplayed things a little bit, but he's in a good place now. The fit with the Bengals actually kind of worries me a little bit. They tend to get the ball out faster than the Chiefs. Burrow is much more of a pure pocket guy than Mahomes. And that fits with now, not that Mahomes can't, please, for the love of God, don't feed the trolls on that. Mahomes is an incredible pocket passer. What I mean is he doesn't prefer it all the time the way that Burrow does. And so Orlando Brown's, we've always talked about his ability to turn pass rushers into the same guy, trying to win the edge over and over and over again. That might fit in pretty well with the Bengals. And it's an upgrade, I think, over what they had last year. And so that's a bummer a little bit, but it adds some spice to the rivalry, and that's a lot of fun. Crayson Neely asks, which defensive lineman will Veach go after in free agency? It's clear you need to get the quarterback to win games. P.S. Thanks for the tip on Tombstone Pizza. We had great Tombstone Pizza content last week. If you missed that, you should go check it out. I let you know how to make the perfect Tombstone Pizza, and you're welcome. So, we know now which defensive lineman. Seth can't pronounce his last name. Aminihu. I'm guessing it's Aminihu. Either way, my inability to pronounce people's last names aside, he's the guy they went for. Like I said, I'm working on his film review right now. Let's see if we can get you guys with just terrific content right now. Let's see. This is the content you're looking for, right? Me showing you. Look at that. Me showing you him getting after the passer with a pretty nice little stutter inside move that he converts into a rip to get around the left guard there. There you go. Now you've seen the process. I pulled back the curtain, turned my back to you while I'm talking. This is the content you're here for. I'm excited for someone to, please don't screenshot that because I think I have a bald spot now. Well, now you're going to screenshot that because I said, please don't screenshot that. You know what? We're just going to move on. So that's who they've chose to sign. Check out the Chief of the North newsletter for my thoughts on him. He's a better rusher from the interior than he is from the edge. He showed as the year moved along a little more usefulness along the edge. The early games, all of his wins were coming inside against the pass. So I'm curious what they do with him and Mike Dana because Mike Dana is also much better on the interior than on the edge. So it's just interesting there. That said, him, Dana, Jones, and Karlaftis, I think that's a front four that you can get pressure with pretty consistently. They do still need at least one more guy. You got to remember Saunders was a big part of their rotation last year. Now I think between Dana and Aminihu, I think you've got that interior rotation there, especially with Tershawn Wharton coming back. But they still need at least one more guy because they lost Clark and Dunlap. Now, maybe they bring back Clark on a cheaper deal. I doubt it. They've done the whole farewell thing with him. Maybe they bring back Dunlap on a 1-year mercenary deal. There's still a few other guys they could grab as mercenaries. But that's the guy they went with for their first guy. And I do think he's I think based on what I see, and again, check out the Chief of the North newsletter. You're going to see a whole breakdown here. But what I would say, I think he's a dude when you talk about pass rushers. I think he is. He's not a star. At least he wasn't last year, but he was definitely another dude along the line. And I think him and Jones are going to be a great complement to one another, along with Karlaftis. It's really interesting having four guys who can play inside and out, who can all execute stunts really well, basically play any alignment you want on an obvious passing down. That's pretty cool. And I think that's something that's really going to give Spags what he wants to work with. Let's see. We got one more here from these questions. One person asked, Wagobast, is this Minnesota Chiefs fan? Yes, it is. Ryan White asked, Seth, if you had to pick one this offseason, would you rather take a shot on Adam Thielen in free agency or trade the necessary capital to acquire Justin Jefferson? I assume you've had the privilege of watching a lot of Vikings football the last few years, way up north, LOL. Yes, I have. I can't even imagine what it would take to acquire Justin Jefferson. I'm guessing they'd have to give up this year and next year's first rounders. And then you've got a guy that you're going to have to pay $30 million a year plus. So, I mean, if I had to pick one this offseason, man, the idea of Patrick Mahomes throwing to Justin Jefferson behind this offensive line, it would be pretty funny. I'm kind of a live in the moment kind of guy. Who knows what tomorrow's going to bring? I blinked and my 1-year-old, he's 17 now. I don't know what happened. He's like 6'3", which you can save your height jokes. I know it's weird, but to me, you don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. It'd be hard for me not to. If they could land Jefferson and not do it, just so they could just set the NFL world on fire for a couple of years. Even before, you end up in some cap issues. Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of here for it. It also would be a way to, assuming that Kelsey finally starts to drop off in 2 or 3 years or 3 or 4 years, however long, hopefully that dude just plays forever. It's a way to kind of convert your offense to start circulating around another guy. So sure, why not? Let's live in the moment. Analytically, it's not the right move and probably long-term, not the soundest decision, but I do think it would give the Chiefs the best shot at repeating this year. And I really want to see Mahomes get back-to-back Super Bowls because that's something Tom Brady never did, if I'm recalling correctly. I think he won 3 and 4 years, though, so maybe I'm wrong. Either way, it's something that, winning back-to-back Super Bowls is something special, puts you even further in the elite category. So fine, why not? I'd trade for Justin Jefferson. Is that the right move? Probably not, but I'd do it anyway. Because like I said, you only live once. Time marches on, etc. All right, let's get to some of these Twitter questions. I'm going to try to roll through these a little bit faster. Sam Hayes. Hey, Sam. Good guy. He asked, Brian Cook starting safety with Reed or get a new starter and keep Cook as the third safety for now. I think they drafted Cook to be a starter, and I think that's what the plan is. They played a lot more not too high because that's mostly with man coverage, but, cover two, too high, 2 safeties deep, split field. There's a lot of different ways to say it, but they didn't play nearly as much single high last year. And that's where Thornhill kind of differentiated himself, and that he's a single high guy. Reed or Cook can do it in limited doses. Both of them have decent speed, but not elite closing speed. So both of them can do it, but it's not their primary wheelhouse. But that's the direction the league's going anyway, with more shell looks than anything else. So where you see a lot more, cover 2 or too high, or cover 3, or or quarters or something that ends up. So like with cover 3, even though you've got one safety deep, it's not true single high because you've got your 2 corners playing back as well. Okay. And so that's where you're seeing more and more of is kind of those shells in the league, kind of like everyone imitates Fangio and tries to keep the offenses from taking the top off of them. And so I think that actually works in terms of the guys that they have. And I'm guessing they draft another guy or they grab a safety in free agency, and because there's still plenty of really good ones left. J-Ro asks, what are the top 2 positions that need to be filled in free agency in the draft? And do you see a window for another rookie class to add a value similar to this past season? I'd be shocked if they added even 2/3 as much value as they did this last draft, because that's really, really hard to do. To be fair, I said I would be shocked if they could match the previous year's draft value as well, and then they actually improved on it. And so it's just a tough thing to do, to draft that well year after year. If they draft really well for a third year in a row, they've basically set themselves up to do whatever they want in terms of free agency because they'll have so much young talent on the team. Doing it 2 years in a row has set them up pretty well already. And then the year before, it's not like they drafted badly; it just wasn't as awesome as these other 2 years. So if they add even remotely similar value to last year, they are setting themselves up so well long term. The two positions that need to be filled in free agency and the draft, they by grabbing a guy who can play edge as well as just a general pass rusher, and by grabbing a left tackle, they've kind of filled in like the desperate needs. They do still need another pass rusher. I would love to see them do that in free agency as well as the draft. And they also need a wide receiver. So really, wide receiver might be the top one there. I'd like to see them get another pass rusher for sure. And then, a right tackle would be good. I know they like Lucas Niang, but, there's health issues there and all that kind of stuff. Thor Woodenson says, I really want your thoughts on free agent Donald Parham and if he fits Kansas City. Man, I don't know anything about him, and I'm sorry. I could make something up, but I don't. He's not a guy I've reviewed at all. I do like the way you frame this. I think he does. Imagine his huge, tall self in the red zone. All right, sold. John Wesley, brother of Charles Wesley, I guess. There's a little Nazarene humor for some of you. Any chance for some KC reunions of either Justin Houston? Nope. Marcus Peters? Nope. Or Melvin Ingram? Maybe. Feels like all these dudes have some left in the tank. I always like Peters' uncanny ability to get turnovers. I don't think Marcus Peters has anything against like Andy Reid, but I'd be shocked if that were the case. The funny thing is he's kind of a fit for some of the things Spags really likes to do in terms of how well he understands zone looks and stuff. But the Chiefs, as of right now, they've got their top three corners are largely are set. Their top four, arguably even, and I don't know where Peters would fit into that. You're bumping a younger guy down. Justin Houston, I don't think there's any chance in Hades of that happening, even though I would absolutely love it. That's the funny thing for me is that Justin Houston is a good fit for what Spags really likes in the defensive end. It's just once things end kind of acrimoniously or however they did, it's kind of tough to recover from that. Matthew Fry, Clowney was just cut from the Browns. Is he someone you'd target for a veteran edge presence in the mold of Ingram Dunlap? I would. I don't think the Chiefs would, though. They have had multiple chances to grab him for cheap, and they haven't. They clearly don't like him as a schematic fit, in my opinion. I think he's okay. He's a guy that you can add as part of the complementary pass rush, and I would think about it, but yeah. Scott Robbins asked, can Veach knock a second straight draft out of the park? Lots of holes to fill. I'm not sure I agree there's lots of genuine holes to fill any more so than you've got with a lot of teams around the league, or most teams, frankly. But like I said, it's tough to hit another draft that much out of the park. If you can grab 3 contributors from a draft, you're doing just fine. Especially if one of them can be a star or a really above average player. But really grabbing 3 contributors in a draft, you're doing okay. That's my goal for any draft. Ideally, when I say contributor, though, I mean like actual, not just special teams contributor, but I mean a guy who either starts and is average to above average, or a guy who has a genuine, a rotational guy like Mike Dana. Earth. Okay. Asks, Chiefs going to have nice compensatory picks coming back next year too. 2022, 2024, Chiefs will have 32 plus picks. What's the record for most picks over 3 years for any team? I'm assuming the 49ers have probably set that at this point. It's remarkable, really. That's more of a comment than a question, but I mean, I think they should have some compensatory picks coming because they've lost some guys, with some of the contracts that Brown's gotten, that Thornhill's gotten. You've seen a few other guys get signed. Saunders, they should do well in that formula. Jonah Dale Lehman asked, what would you rate the offseason at this point? I give it like a C- or a D+. Dang, Jonah, you're not happy. After reviewing Taylor and Amenahu's film, they've only done a couple things, but those things they've done I've really liked. And so as of right now, I would say more like a B-. And the reason it's even that low would be I want to see what their plan is with the wide receiver position, because that's going to matter. Clubber Lang asks, thoughts on Zeke Elliott as RB2, pass blocking on God mode. He might come at a reasonable cost. Zeke over McKinnon. I'm not sure if Zeke is better than McKinnon for what the Chiefs need him for, because they don't just need he's a great pass blocker for sure, but they also need a guy who can contribute in the pass game a little more than what Zeke does, generally speaking, besides as a blocker. I mean, it'd be fine if he came for, $1 million a year. That'd be fine by me. Or $1 million or $2 million, basically what McKinnon's done. But he's a name, and names are tougher to grab for that. Nigel Tufnell says, would be curious to rate this year's group of leading free agency. Again, last year's group. Granted, it's still early into free agency. It is. This year, they've lost more guys, like more guys that had genuine roles. I mean, just if you think, Juju Smith-Schuster, Frank Clark, Colin Saunders, Juan Thornhill, Orlando Brown, these guys were all starters or heavy rotational guys. So this is like the biggest churn that they've seen. The good news in all that is, while those guys were important rotational guys, none of them were their foundational guys. And there's a difference between those two things. So that's one reason why the numbers are tough, and they definitely need to continue to build around those guys. But they largely have replaced most of what they've lost, depending on what they do at receiver and to an extent safety. A few more questions about safety, which I already covered a little bit. Felix Lau asked, which free agent running back do you want to see in Kansas City? I really enjoy watching your show from Germany. Hey, thanks. I appreciate that. I would love for them to just bring back Jerick McKinnon and then draft a guy in the late rounds and go with Isaiah Pacheco. That's kind of, I mean, right now, if they brought back McKinnon, right, they'd be Pacheco, CEH, and McKinnon. Now we'll see if CH is on the roster when the season starts. It doesn't make a ton of sense to cut him because they don't save a lot of money, but I don't think there's really a trade market there for him either. So it's kind of a goofy situation there. He may end up asking for a release because I'm sure he's a guy who wants to be a bigger part of the rotation. Henny Given Sunday asks, has Lucas Niang shown enough to think he'll be serviceable at right tackle? It'd be exciting to see each draft best player available. Not for me. He hasn't shown enough, but that's mostly been a health thing. When he did play very briefly, him and Wiley were roughly equivalent at that time, but Wiley's gotten a little better since then. So I'm not 100% sure. It's just going to be largely health dependent, and he's going to need to be able to control his weight. All right, just got time for a couple more, and I'm sorry, guys, but I got to get to work on this, and then I got to get to work at whatever it is they pay me to do here. Does signing Juwan, Dorian DeBose asked, does signing Juwan change anything about our draft priorities? I mean, to an extent, yeah. I mean, it means that you've only got one tackle position to fill, so you're no longer at like emergent status. Mark Wells asked, what is the Chiefs and more specifically Veach's direction for the 2023 offseason based on the moves already made? So far, it seems to be to upgrade some of the talent that was in place that was heavily utilized. Taylor, I think, is a pass protecting upgrade over Orlando Brown. We'll see how he does transitioning from right to left, of course. Last year, he was a better pass blocker, but that was from the right tackle spot. So we'll see. And I think Aminihu is better than any pass rusher besides Chris Jones the Chiefs had last year. So I think it's to try to not just replenish, but to try to, kick things up a notch at those positions as well. Mealer says, since you, Seth, no ball, thank you. I always love a good Time Czars reference. Which positions do the Chiefs address in the top 100, and which later round safety from the Southeast obviously is their next secondary steal? I don't know which safety is going to be their secondary steal. I haven't even started reviewing draft prospects yet, but I think what they address in the top 100, I got a feeling they go tackle. I got a feeling they go defensive line, and I'm thinking they probably go wide receiver. Those are the three places I would go if I were the Chiefs. Jiffy asked, what are your thoughts on how the Chiefs will address safety as there are only two on the roster right now? I think there's lots of guys in free agency. I think they grab one there. Kyle Collier asks, how excited should we be about the beginning of the Brian Cook era? I'm excited. He plays fast, hits hard. He had some mental errors last year, but he was starting to play a lot better as the year went along. That's what you want to see out of a rookie. And we're just going to do one or two more. The Bloody Nine, I don't know what that means, but fair enough. What are the basic positions we need to be solid enough to compete? We're already there. They could do nothing else, and they're already there. They've got the core in place. I've got two wide receiver questions, and we're going to close out with those. Tad, Schroeder asks, who do we get as a free agent wide receiver? Thoughts on Thielen versus Chark? I think if you're looking to replace Juju Smith-Schuster's skill set the most, you go with Adam Thielen. He's a guy who can get open against man coverage just on short stuff. He's not really a separator, intermediate and deep at this point in his career, but he understands how to read zones. He understands how to separate a little bit. He's not a guy that teams can leave one-on-one constantly because he will hurt them a little bit. And he's been a solid red zone target for a while. Chark threatens all three levels of the field a little bit better, but he's not as versatile in terms of getting open underneath. I'd probably take Chark just because I think that they got to see what they have in Sky Moore in terms of being that kind of short and intermediate guy. And Travis Kelce obviously fulfills that role. I'd love to see them grab another guy who could stretch the field as they work with Tony to see what he can do. Carlos A asks D-Hop or OBJ. So, DeAndre Hopkins or Odell Beckham Jr. I'd take Hopkins. Odell there's just so many question marks there compared to what I think he's looking for. All right. We've gone way longer than I meant to go. This is the most fun part of my job. I appreciate all the questions. Again, make sure to hit like, subscribe, all the YouTube stuff. If you don't know what that means, I don't know, ask someone and they'll tell you how to support a channel. I appreciate you all. It's a great week to be a Chiefs fan. And thank you again for all the great questions.